This has been probably almost a 3-year journey now. There really was nobody on the scene outside of Staff Garden. So tentatively reached out saying we're looking because currently everything is in paper, binders, sitting on somebody's office floor.
So I am very passionate about clinical ladders. We do not have one in the market that I currently was working in, and I had been very diligently trying to get one going for about 8 years. And so when I came into this new position, I saw an opportunity to really try to create something that we could standardize across our entire healthcare system, because we have such variation in clinical ladders. We have no clinical ladder. We have a very robust clinical ladder with a lot of different levels. We have a clinical ladder that's built around having those big portfolios and those big binders and point-based systems. For me, it was this is the one. I saw it and I instantly fell in love with it. I loved the concept that it's all cloud-based, that the nurses could access it from the desktops at work or their phones or their iPads. Just that usability and just the uniqueness of the platform itself was just absolutely fantastic, and that we could customize it.
So the first piece that we wanted was reportability. I mean, yes, we want digitization so that staff are able to access, put data in. The element that we were clearly missing in our organization was reportability. I also oversee Magnet for our organization, so having the ability to pull out and get to the rich data and all the work that our nurses are doing, looking at synergy across our system and how that's correlating to improvements was a huge selling point. And that was also a huge selling point for our chief nurse officer.
Easier access. They didn't have to bring their binders to the nursing administration office, and the directors didn't have to all come down to the office every time they wanted to view a binder. It was just easier access and storing things digitally, not having to carry things around.
So we're almost 3 months into getting people to input their data. I now know around 6,500 nurses' degree status. And I know that there are about 300 or 3,000 nurses or so that are certified in what they're certified in and where they live. I did not have that look into that. And now I can look at it at the system level. I can look at it at the care site level. Staff Garden's building me dash dials that create like a dashboard for me so that I can even just see at a glance what we look like. That enables us to know, well, where do we need to grow, for example? So we have a requirement that all of our nurses become bachelor's degreed within 2 years of employment. And so we are fortunate to have, in many cases, 85 to 90 something of our nurses' bachelor's degrees. But we want to see them continue to grow. So what else are they doing? And it's so heartening to see that they're getting master's degrees, they're becoming nurse practitioners, they're getting doctorates of nursing practice.
The collaboration between the managers too, it's so easy. They can, hopefully on their end, can see like very easily, the check marks and what needs to be done, what has been done, what needs to be approved and whatnot. So I feel like the process itself has increased our collaboration together as a team.
Well, with Staff Garden, you can filter so that you can show that these are all the nurses that had this volunteer activity in the last 2 years. So then I could say, this is how many nurses we've had that have done volunteer work that have used it on the clinical ladder. For this example, we're planning on using COVID vaccine clinics during the pandemic. And so I could actually look and find, because they put in what they volunteered for, that's part of our evidence that we require. They put in what they used it for, so I was able to figure out how many nurses actually use that in their clinical ladder.
When we talked about budget, in particular the cost of the program, we had an internal consultant group working with us, and we worked with them for a very long time and built out an ROI model where we were able to use current clinical ladder participation, the cost of the new program in terms of the bonuses that nurses would get, along with the cost of Staff Garden, and then project. You would need to, it would say, well, based on that, if you retain 3 nurses, you've completely covered the cost of the program. Being able to track this data was another huge element. We really highlighted the gap that we have in actually knowing how many are on a clinical ladder and being able to tie recruitment retention into a digital platform that was now going to give us that in great detail.
You know, one of the things as a magnet program director that we always struggle with, what are some of those initiatives that are going on in the organization, and being able to identify them and utilize them when we're writing our magnet documents and proving those sources of evidence that we have to, and having the data to support those stories. And so with using a platform like Staff Garden, we're able to have a repository of those where we can go in and say, wow, you know, look what this nurse has done. Look at the data they were able to generate, and pull that story and really use it to prove that, yes, we met those standards. You know, we met that exemplary professional practice concept, and really, again, celebrate the achievements of the nurses in an organization.
It was just perceived as something extra work to do and is just not worth it. Now that we've switched over to Staff Garden, it's been such an easier, smoother process. So I feel like I hear more comments like, oh, it's a lot easier. Oh, it's a lot nicer. Oh, it's such a easier way to, you know, start or maintain or advance. So I think the feedback that I get is a lot more positive than before.
Early on in the build process with Staff Garden, of course, we've customized everything from beginning to end, it seems. We set up a list of goals that we really wanted to see as our first set of outcome measures. And they've been building them ever since, and we're just about, I think we're this week or next week going to be able to launch the details on all of those goals. So it's exciting to see that come to fruition. And you know, on the measurement side, it will make it so wonderful to be able to not only have a report on that, but we can go into that Excel export function and just get the detail if we need it. I have been schooled in the thought that relationships make everything possible. You know, Innova is built on relationships. Part of our core values are for collaborative practice, you know, and that doesn't mean just in the clinical arena, that means in everything. As we approach each other, that we need to be able to assume good intent and to work with each other as fruitfully as possible. And unless you get to know people, that you probably won't have the same meeting of the minds that you would have otherwise. Quite frankly, Staff Garden people speak a different language than I do sometimes. I'm a nurse, you know, you guys are software people, you know, and so the fact that I can establish a relationship with you and say, oh, I really don't get what you're saying, without feeling less than or feeling uncomfortable, you know, it just makes it a whole lot easier and smoother, and I think we get to a more expedient answer. I don't know that this is a software question for me. I think it's more the flexibility of the organization with how they use the software and the ongoing development of it. When I meet with Alana and I say, I'd like to see this, and she goes, well, we don't have that now, but we can talk to engineering about that. I'm always just amazed. Being so very customer focused is a big plus.
It's amazing. Staff Garden support, I can't say enough for Alana, if that's okay if I say that.
Please do. Please do.
She is the most patient person I can ever imagine. It was very well structured. It was a very structured rollout for education. It was education for the clinical nurses applying to the program, education for the committee members, education for myself as the administrator of the program, and then it was all recorded so that all the new nurses coming on board from now on will have access to that training.
Alana's been wonderful. Jessica is the follow-up guru of the world. Then, of course, we've got the engineering guys, you know. So it's like we still are meeting with them regularly, and it's just, we're almost like friends these days.
Brian Card has been one of the most phenomenal partners as a vendor in my almost 40 years of nursing experience that I have had to work with. He was constantly engaged in spite of barriers and obstacles, working to even help us as we think through things, sharing information, providing us updates on other health systems who are engaging, that again would continue to spark our internal discussion and help us to think about a different way to approach it to get approval or to pilot.
Actually, Alana came and did a couple of just manager training with us. There's plenty of videos on Staff Garden that are so helpful, so I try to point people there.
the staff garden help desk has actually been truly helpful. And as a result, that's starting to get its own level of feedback. Call them, they'll fix it. And so I think the staff nurses are getting the sense that no, this is not as crazy as it feels. They don't have to get copies of everything they own that justifies their submission for their ladder, or they don't have to maintain a separate database of any kind of their own. They can use this as their portfolio. And as they move within Inova, they can literally be transferred the next day to that unit, and that new leader can then start to see, oh yes, this nurse has been doing this and this and this, and then there's evidence of it.
Our partnership with Staff Garden has really added to what you can do with software and technology. I think that it's helped our programs because we're able to adapt the programs in a way that make it an individualized experience for the end user. But then from our perspective, we can see globally, the governing body can see globally the different evidence and how that works from the three of them.
All nurses want to do great things, right? But it's our responsibilities as leaders to take some of those barriers and roadblocks out of their way so that they can do something that's great, that is going to make them feel good at the end of the day, that is going to create positive patient outcomes. And I feel the clinical ladder provides them with that empowerment to be able to do those things and to really kind of take their own professional practice that next step.
I think it's absolutely worth it to go to an electronic platform. Part of that is being able to see what people are doing in a broader way, and unless you had a giant Excel spreadsheet with lots of pivot tables, I don't see how you could do that with the paper program. I mean, I can filter and get just about anything that I want. I can see when someone worked last on their application, so I know if someone's actively working or if they opened it 6 months ago and now they haven't done anything with it. It gives you a lot of information, which is great.
It was the most seamless, painless process. Experts, competent, follow-up and follow-through, phenomenal. I also think they have vision and ideas. They're able to inform you as you're building your structure on their platform, ways that may work better for you, ways that they've seen work better that you hadn't even thought of, because I don't do IT, I don't build platforms, but they have ideas. So I think when you're thinking about that, it's not just can they do what you want, but are they bringing expertise to the table that's going to elevate what you're trying to accomplish? And I feel like they've really been able to do that with us.